Grandma and I are here in Grandma Blank's apartment, and I'm going to ask Grandma some questions about her early childhood and just about coming to America and everything. So,
Okay.
all right. You've told me the story before about you coming to America, but maybe before that, could you tell me about maybe a little bit about your growing up in Germany and just kind of what it was like, things you did and played and
Well, I would say I had a very happy childhood, but I grew up in the war years of World War One, and my dad was stationed in Alsace-Lorraine, and
where's that at?
that is France.
France?
Yeah, and we were so close that at times we could hear the shooting, the bombarding, and my sister and I, we would play and horse around in the fields when we were with my mother, and she would say, "Oh, children, how can you be so happy? Don't you hear the shooting? And your dad is there." And then for a moment we would stop and feel bad, but as a child, soon forgotten, and we were happy again. And then my sister was a year and a half older than I am. Was very gifted, very smart, and I never was jealous. I always admired that I had such a smart sister. But in school, if a teacher heard my name Häberle, they said, "Are you the sister of Anna Häberle?" And I would say yes. And then they would say, "We hope you do as well as she does." And I don't think that always put me a few notches down. Not that I had bad grades, I still had my report card from all the years. They were good grades, but hers were, on top of good, were excellent. It was always, and the end of the year she would get a reward, maybe a book or something. And so I felt always I was in the shadow of my sister. And but we were happy. We had our fights like kids do. We slept in a great big bed, and sometimes we had a fight and I pushed her out of bed. But anyhow, we were happy, and then I was in the upper grade, and when the war ended and my dad came home.
So there's no prisoner of war or
No,
just
not
really...
that, but he was very thin, and by standing in the trenches in the winter, he was full of rheumatism. His fingers were like sausages, swollen up, and then...
Do you know how he felt about the war?
But all the soldiers that came back, they were disillusioned, and I remember we had a teacher, and he would say, "Oh, you poor children, you and your children will yet have to pay for the war debts, you know what that accumulated." And then there was disillusionment in the people. There was no work. The men came home and had no work. And it's not that we were a poor family, but there was just you couldn't buy things what you wanted, and there was no work. My dad had a decorating business, and in a good time he would have 4 or 5 men working for him, and everything was kind of depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And in those years, I ended my grammar school and was confirmed. And I remember that I said, can I not even have a picture of myself for my confirmation? And my parents said, we have no money. So my sister, from her I have a picture, but for me there was no more money for. And so, but in general, we were happy. We did the things what children do here. I loved water all the time. I was in the swimming pool and on the rivers, and wherever there was water to swim, I was there. And then my sister worked in an office like a bookkeeper, and I didn't want to be in an office. And I kind of balked about it. I said, just because everybody else, I don't want to be, I had gone to school and had learned some shorthand and things what I liked, I did, but still I didn't want to be a office girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had silly ideas. I wanted to travel, I wanted to see the world, and my parents would say, but what you want to do? You have no profession, you can do nothing. You think if somebody pays you for traveling? And so then they said, at least learn how to sew. And I said, okay, but do I have to go for 3 years, be an apprentice? And just to get me in, they said no. And so I started in a dressmaking shop. And when the first year was over, then this lady said, well, you're doing so well and you seem to enjoy what you're doing, so why don't you complete the 3 years and take the examination and get your papers, you know. And so I agreed, and I did that, and I graduated, and that was...
How old were you then?
17, 18, something.
Okay.
And I went to a different school, like a trade school, where I learned how to make patterns, you know, for sewing and all the things pertaining to dressmaking. And we went to dances and to hikes into the forest mountains, and we really had a good time. I also liked dancing, while my sister liked more skiing. And so we said, who has the better time, she or I? And each one said, well, I have more fun. And then her skiing ended when she had an accident and fell, and there was a concussion in her knee, which was quite serious for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So after that she didn't go anymore. And then in one of the dances I got to know your grandpa,
Okay.
Heinrich, and that was
How old were you when you met him? At like about how old?
what, 18, 19,
Okay.
something. And then that was really what broke the camel's back. He was Catholic, and his parents were staunch Catholics. And my parents were good Lutherans, and my dad was in the church council, you know, like, I don't know what to say. He was not the elder, but whenever there were meetings, he was called in.
Yeah.
And they said that will never do. And he got to hear the same from his parents. He had completed his apprenticeship. He was an accountant, and after he was through, he worked in a bank, and then they said, if you don't obey us, we throw you out of the house. And I mean threats, and my parents didn't look well on it. They didn't threaten me with anything, but they said, nothing good will come out of this, nothing. There was a Catholic priest in the town, and his biggest joy was to disrupt mixed marriages. Something went wrong, like one parent got sick, he was right there, and he said, that's the curse of the Lord, because you didn't, you know. And families were divided, and children were taken out of religious classes from the Lutheran church into the Catholic church. And the parents remembered all that. And so that went on, but we saw each other for, 3 or 4 years or so.
Grandma, could you tell me about how Grandpa Blank ended up in America and moving to the United States?
Well, after some time, he told my sister about his plans, but told her not to tell me anything, so it never entered my mind that he would find a way out of this harassment from his parents and my parents, and that they didn't look well on it as a union, and said you only go into problems and you will regret it. And so life went on. In the meantime, also my grandmother became very sick and had a stroke, and at that time they didn't put people into nursing homes. We took care of her at home, and I took part of it because my mom was really burdened down with the work and the garden and the field we had, and so, and I went still to work every day. And then one day somebody told me, oh, your friend Heinrich is going to go to America. And I said, oh, no, never. That would, that is just, must be just gossip. And I dismissed it. But later on it came back to me, and I thought, I must ask him about it. And then he came in the evening, and I wanted to know right away, say that it is a lie. And he said, you go and eat your meal first, and then we talk. And then I became more, why didn't he say so right away? And so after I confronted him again, and he said, yes, I have the plan. If Otto, my friend, likes it in America, I will go there too. And that really took the rock under my feet away. I couldn't believe it, and I felt hurt, and I said, you should have told me. And so time went on, because you don't get a passport to America right away. You have to go make a petition and go to the American Council and all that. So time went on, and we saw each other, and then in the meantime my grandma died. I felt very saddened about that. And then one day he told me, I'm going to the consulate, and if I get the permission, I will then go to America. And his parents favored that. They thought, then he's away from me. And he got the permission, and he set a date. And he even asked me that we should get engaged before he left. And I said, oh, never. I will not be a bride that sits and waits. And I said, no, never. And I don't even give you a promise, nor do I expect from you a promise. You just go as a free man. If you find someone else, you go ahead. You're not bound to anything. And with that, we parted. It wasn't easy, but we said goodbye. And afterwards, I accepted sometimes a date and went and maybe had a good time for a while, but I usually came home and cried myself to sleep. It was just not the same. And one day I went to the opera in Freiburg with a man, and when he started to want to hold my hands and come closer, and I was just unhappy about it, and I didn't want to lead anybody on. I always told him, I'm not committed to Heinrich, but he is still the first one in my heart. And then usually that stopped it. And then the letters came. Sometimes, well, usually one letter a week, sometimes 2 letters a week. And he described to me the ordeal of being an immigrant. And his friend Otto had another fellow come before Henry, and they said, well, we had to go through the tough times, let them go through it too. And in Germany, he was an accountant.
Grandpa was an accountant?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he had a good job. But he didn't know the language, so this Otto said, you have to learn the language first. I got you a job as a dishwasher in a small restaurant, and at those times they didn't have machines. They washed by hand in hot, soapy water. And he did that for hours and hours, till his hands broke out from the strong soaps. And then he had to find his way back to the little room where he had rented. And not knowing the city, not knowing around.
Now this was in Chicago?
In Chicago. Okay. Sometimes he was on the elevated train and from exhaustion fell asleep and ran around and around. Sometimes then he didn't know where he was. Sometimes he got maybe an hour or so sleep by the time he found his way back. And the other fellow said, well, that's what we went through. You go through it too. That's how you learn to cope for yourself. So it wasn't easy, and he didn't lament to me, but he told me that later on, when I came, his letters always sounded hopeful. And then when he knew a little bit of English, then the Otto got him a job in the Bismarck Hotel where he worked.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was thinking here, what year was it that Grandpa moved to the United States?
I think about 1928.
Okay.
Around that.
Mm-hmm.
And well, he wrote to me all the time. I wrote back to him, but he hardly ever wrote to his parents. He had I think, a little hurt feeling. You wanted me to go, I'm gone, so make it up for yourself. And it even became to that part that they were so worried because he didn't write to them. And in being parents, they didn't know what to do. They wouldn't come to me, but they asked Heinrich's brother, what lived in northern Germany, to write to me and ask me if I had heard from him. You know, like casual. And so Frederick wrote me a nice letter, and I answered him back. And he was wholly on my side, kind of condemning his parents for being so hard-hearted, because he had married a girl that was Protestant.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Henry was the last one, and they would not want that to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Frederick was all on my side and wrote me a nice letter, and I told him how he was in Chicago and that he worked that time in the Bismarck Hotel as a busboy, you know, what cleared the tables and all that. And then his letters became more cheerful, and he became I became a waiter then. I don't know now with he worked quite yeah, he stayed at the Bismarck Hotel. And then as he progressed, every letter there were either $2 or $3 in it. And he said, do with it what you want. But I didn't touch it. I put it together and then I put it in the bank on a separate account. And then when it came toward Christmas, then he wrote me and said, I'm going to send you some money and I want you to go to my folks on Christmas and bring it to them as a greeting. And I assure you, you will be welcomed. When I read it, I thought, I don't go. And then the money came, I don't know, it was maybe $30 or something like that. And then he begged me again, please go and bring greetings to my folks. And then as it came to Christmas, I went. And his mother opened the door and pulled me in with two hands. And his father came and very life-changed people. And come in and they had little Christmas trees and they had presents there for me. And well, I couldn't say much. I was.
You weren't expecting all that.
Yeah, and then they begged me to come again, to come and visit them, that they are lonely and I should come again, and they have nothing personally against me, and I understand, and so it went, and I still, and yeah, in every letter he said, come to me to America. And I never answered that. I always said, me to go to America? That's impossible. I didn't even have a desire to come to America. My homeland, my town, my friends were all so dear to me. I thought, I cannot leave that. And so time went on, and I stayed then by myself. I didn't accept no more dates when somebody asked me. No, I would say I'm still writing to Heinrich. And when they said, well, are you going to go to America? Well, I don't know, I don't think so. And so time went on, and it came to a second Christmas. And I don't know no more. I think I went with my folks to a concert, but ended up in a dance where I had met Henry the first time. And after I came home from that dance, I could not sleep, And the thought came, why couldn't you go to America? Why is that so impossible? You can always come back. and I think I didn't sleep all night. Next morning I said to my mom, I think I go to America. And that blew the bottom out of my family. Oh, now you're really out of your mind. No, why can I not go?
How old were you at this time?
Huh?
How old were you at this time?
24, I think.
Okay.
Something like that. I'm not, because in 1930 I came to America.
Okay.
It was almost Thanksgiving time.
All right.
When I came to America. And once I had my mind set up, then it was straight, you go to America. And when I had to go to Stuttgart, which is in the next state where the American consulate was, when I got the permission to go, I walked in the street and I saw a sign, Lufthansa, for airline.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in there and I said, would you have a flight from Stuttgart to Freiburg this evening? And they looked and they said, yeah, we have 2 more seats. And I said, okay, I take the one. And you see, Stuttgart is in Württemberg and there is the Black Forest. And in order to go by train, you have to go all around the mountain. It takes many hours.
Mm-hmm.
With the air flight, it takes less than an hour.
Okay. So it's from Wittenberg?
From Württemberg, that's the state.
Okay.
You know, like Indiana,
Okay.
Illinois. And Stuttgart is the city in Württemberg.
Okay.
So, of course, those planes were not big, you
Right.
know. They maybe 20 passengers or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I called my sister who worked in Freiburg and said, I'm coming with the plane. And it was beautiful. I just loved it.
That was your first plane
My
ride.
plane flight. And we flew over the Black Forest in the autumn, sunshine, and I could see the people working in the fields below. And that plane also, sometimes there was a dip, like you catch your breath, and then it goes on. But it was fun, and well, I came home, and then I had to, I had then many customers where I sold for already, and I had to clean up everything and get ready, and somehow or other, it's like a dream now. I came.
So now you went from, where did you fly to?
Well, I flew to Freiburg, and that's
Okay,
a
Freiburg.
half an hour from home
Okay.
by train, half an hour train ride, and then in November I left for, and when I think back now, I just had to steel myself against all the tears from my mom and from my sister My dad was more stout. He didn't show it so much. But anyhow, I said goodbye and sailed to, I went by train to northern Germany to see Frederick, his brother and his wife, and stayed a few days with them. And Henry's mom was with me. She visited them too. It was her first time. And she stayed longer then. And then he wrote, how was it? He was in the military, as a life.
I mean, Frederick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyhow, he went with me to Hamburg, where I boarded the steamer Columbus, I think it was. And it was my first journey by boat. And it was first so quiet, so smooth, and I thought, I want to experience a little turbulence that I can talk about. So I asked one of the stewards, is it always that quiet? And he said, why? I said, well, I like to see a little action. He said, the time will come you walk on the walls and you don't know if it's the floor or the wall. And we did have storm, and it got quite stormy in the English Channel. But anyhow, I made it. I on the boat, I saw the first black lady. So after, I guess, 10 days, we came to America, and I saw the lady, the Statue of Liberty, at a distance, and then some great awe came in me, and I became a little, with all my big talking, I became quite timid. And it all looked so big. And he landed, and I was welcomed by Henry's cousin, Max Planck, who lived in New York, and he worked in a big bookstore in New York, and he was to get me on the train to Chicago.
Did you have to go through any type of immigration type of checks?
No. He was, well, he had to show that, that I was in his care for that long, and I would be put on the train. He had to sign for me.
Okay.
But this Max was just married a week before, and he wanted me to at least stay a day or so in New York, and he would put me on the train the next day. And so I saw New York in the fog and the dirt of a great city, and they showed me the skyscrapers, and I looked up and I didn't see the top because it was in the fog. And on the sidewalks were some derelicts sleeping in the gutter, and I was just horrified. And Max asked me, now how do you like New York? And I said, I don't like it a bit. He said, oh, then wait till you come to Chicago. It's going to be worse.
Oh boy.
And I didn't like that at all, but anyhow, I spent the evening with him and his wife and some friends. And the next day they took me across into New Jersey to a German restaurant where we had a Schlachtfest, where they had killed, pig and but they ate like, I don't know, to me, I could eat very little and I watched them and I thought, they eat so hungry like, anyhow, the next day he put me on a train and that was a long, long ride. And I looked out and I saw the landscape and I saw houses. I thought, oh, now I know we had gone to the movies and saw movies from America but with German titles. And I always had thought, I never see houses like that in Germany. I wonder where. Then I knew that the pictures were taken in America and just put German titles on it.
Oh.
And so, well, the landscape was not all that exciting, and it was November and
Yeah.
really and I had some sandwiches along that they had given me, and I knew a few words in English, but not much. And I bought a big orange, and I didn't know the money, so I put some coins in my hand and said to the man, take. And I had the orange. And he took a quarter. And the quarter looked kind of big to me. I didn't know what it was. And I thought, he took the quarter and I thought, now I got chipped.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it was okay, I don't know. It was a big orange. And then I didn't want anything no more. I was too excited. And then when we got closer toward Illinois, and I didn't know, it got then dark, and every time the train stopped, I looked around and I said to the people around me, Chicago? Oh, no. Then I sat down again, and then we rode another hour and the train stopped again, and Chicago? No. Somebody tried to explain to me, don't worry, the train doesn't go further than Chicago.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't understand it, They said, just sit down here. And well, finally it got to be, then they all said, for my sake, all but said around me, Chicago. and then I looked out and saw the people standing, and I saw Henry at a distance. But the train went past him. And then when the train stopped, one of those red porters came to take a black man, and he wanted to take my suitcase. I said, no. So I think I hauled it off myself. And then they saw me and they came running. His friends were there too. They all wanted to be there. And there was a great welcome. And well, we were really happy. Next day, we went to City Hall to get the marriage license. And what did I know of City Hall? When we came there, everybody smiled at us. I thought, why do they smile at us? But it was the City Hall where everybody takes out the marriage license.
Uh-huh.
So, and then after that, some friends came, what worked with Henry, a couple. The lady was, no, they were both from Germany, but years and years ago. And they wanted to show me Chicago.
So were you married in City Hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we went later on to a pastor because I had promised my mom I would be married by a Protestant pastor, you know. But that had to be arranged first. But
Right.
the City Hall, that was the first thing. And then they drove us through Chicago. Well, I know they drove way to the south side to Chinatown and but that all was and then in the evening they dropped us off and we went to a restaurant. I still could find it in Chicago, where we had a wedding dinner, and they all ate steaks, and I was appalled when I saw those big hunks of meat, and that they all could eat that much meat, and they said it was good. And well, anyhow, I ate as much as I could, and then Henry had then, before I came, rented an apartment. That was the apartment opposite the Cubs ballpark in Chicago.
In Wrigley Field.
Wrigley Field, yeah.
It was on the, if I remember correctly, it was on the right
Right-hand
field.
side,
Right-hand side of the
on
field.
Sheffield Avenue, on the second floor. It was a 3-story building. And he had ordered, he had bought the whole furnishing of that apartment from a couple what went back to Germany because the lady was sick all the time and the climate didn't agree to her.
And you never had to pay for a Cubs game, right? Because you just go up on the roof and watch.
I
watch
never was a sport fan, and the people that owned the house didn't want people to go up on the roof. It damaged the roof. They put barriers there. But when I looked out the window, there were always people saying, "Can we look out your window to the park, Cubs Park?" But we couldn't see from the window. But the boys would take a stepladder on that little balcony. You had to go through the window, and they sat on the stepladder. Then they could look over. But when the ball game was on, the applause and the yelling and that, it was like a storm. And car after, I have pictures of car after car after car. There was no parking space anywhere. And and we lived there, we had fun. I never got along too well with that Otto because he was a braggadocio and he worked himself up in the hotel. He became a head waiter and he became, anyhow. And the thing, what bugged me the most, he put everything down what was German. And glorified everything what was American. And that didn't sit right with me. I wanted to be just. I agreed what I liked about America, and I freely wrote back home and said, this is what I like about America, that you're not questioned who your parents are and what education you had. You be judged for what you are as a person. And I like that better than in Germany, where they always say, are you academically educated? What are your parents? And I did like that judging, and I still don't like it, you know. And but anyhow, there were visitors from Emmendingen. A lady came, and we were all invited to that home. And and Henry couldn't go; he had to work that night. But Otto was there, and he became drunk. There was still prohibition, but people made home brew. They made beer and they made wine, and Otto became drunk and became very, in my estimation, nasty. And this lady asked him about his job, and he made a glorified picture how he, in his white suit, will go to the back door, and where the fellow stood and waited for a job and could say, "It's nothing today, boys," and you know, and made himself, you know, like, and then she said, and well, how is then Heinrich Blanc? What does he do? And then I said, he is just an ordinary waiter. And then Otto got mad at me, you know, and it was just, I kept on saying, I'd rather have less and live in a small apartment and we be alone by ourselves and not have these boys here. Because he was snideful. Even he said he was Henry's friend, but he made things behind his back which I saw, which was not nice. And so then we moved in a small one-bedroom apartment, again on the third floor on Glenwood Avenue. Then we moved to Glenwood Avenue, and that was our first apartment that we had, where we were by ourselves, and it was a very happy time. And then came the time when we expected Hedy, and that was happy. And
what year was that?
That was, well, today is Rudy's birthday.
Okay, and today is?
He's 63 years old, and that was in 1934.
1934.
And well, Henry was a very happy daddy. I never expected that he would be so caring and loving and happy with his child. And so the time went fast, and then we talked about, and my folks at home, they said, oh, can you not come and visit us and bring Rudy along? And then my sister was planning to get married that year, and she said, I just want you to be there for my wedding. So we planned to go, but Henry said, I stay here and you go with Rudy. As hard it will be to be away from you, but I stay here and I make the money, and it was still kind of depression time. And so we planned it, and it finally materialized. Rudy was then close to 2 years old. And shortly before that was going on a boat again with the, he broke his arm, and he had his arm in a cast when we went on the boat, but he was so active it didn't seem to. He walked around the boat and banging his cast against the wall, and everybody said, oh, that poor little boy, and he went knocking his cast. And the time went fast, and I was welcomed at home, and the Blanc family was there with great joy seeing their grandchild, and it was almost a daily battle when I left to see the Blanc family, and my family said, are you going already again? And when I came to the Blanc family, they said, are you coming so late? We're waiting for hours already. and that kept up during my whole visit. I said, don't make it so hard for me. And it was always about a 20 minutes walk from my home, from the Haverly home to the Blanc home. And Rudy was running everywhere, and I had my time getting there. So finally we bought a stroller, and I could strap him in the stroller and at least walk fast. And by the time...
What year was it when you went to Germany? That was
1936.
36, okay.
And that's where my sister got married, and I was glad I was there, and everybody enjoyed Rudy, and he began to speak fluently German, even with the accent in Emmendingen, and could sing, and well, it was a great time. And I think I was there about 6 or 7 weeks, and then was the great homecoming, and Henry was in the first moment when he greeted Rudy. Rudy was kind of strange, and he said, oh, he doesn't know me anymore. I said, oh, just give him a few minutes time. He talked about his daddy all the time, so give him a few minutes time. And before we were back at our apartment, he already sat on his lap and told him stuff, and we all laughed about. He said, what did your grandfather say to you? And he said, Lauspieple, which means like the Dickens, a little Dickens. And he said it in the same dialect, the way they talk, and he was delighted, and so it was very happy that we were together again, and so the time went fast, and then we talked about he should not grow up and just be an only child and get spoiled by everyone. And but we also considered that could we afford it, because it was still, and then we decided we shouldn't live with the second child on the third floor, where it would be so hard to go down, up and down with two small children. And so we decided to move again in a first floor apartment. And we found a place, and we moved there. And then some months later, then Henry was born. And we were very happy with him.
This was 1939.
39. That was when the war started. And that was a time for many tears for me. I knew we couldn't get in contact with our families anymore. And then at that time I was not a citizen yet. Henry was a citizen, but I wasn't. And you wouldn't believe it, what hatred we faced. Especially, I was now termed an enemy alien. I had to go to the post office and be fingerprinted like a criminal. And on the post office wall were all the signs about Nazis and hatred signs. And when it was my turn to be fingerprinted, the tears were running down my face, and was an elderly man, and he said, "Oh, little lady, we don't eat as hot as we cook. Don't settle down, things will go all right again." And then there was the verdict that you couldn't have no camera. You would have to turn your camera in. You couldn't leave the state without notifying the authorities. We had to go and have a passport picture taken, and that was then attached to the fingerprints and was turned into Washington. And that day when we went to the photographer, we had Henry along, your dad along, and we came into that studio, and the photographer said, "Oh, what a beautiful little child. Are we going to take his picture?" And I said, "No, I have to have my passport picture taken. I am an enemy alien." And he said, "You stand right there against the wall and don't smile." He changed his tune like, "You are dirt." And he took my picture and he said, "You can pick it up in 3 days or something." And we left, and I cried all the way home. And I said, I never would have thought that we would get such a treatment. And the same thing in the apartment where we lived. I came down in the basement with my wash, and I greeted the ladies what were there. I said, "Good morning," and nobody answered, and I thought they didn't hear me, so I said, "Good morning." And the Norwegian lady what lived on the third floor said, I heard it the first time we decided not to talk to Nazis anymore. So I took my clothes again and went upstairs and cried again. I felt so, really so unhappy. And the same lady, a few weeks later, I met her in the hallway, and I just walked my way, and she said, "Good morning to you." And I looked up and she said, "I changed my mind with you. I kinda like you, so good morning to you." Well, and the worst was when Rudy came in and he said, "The kids won't play with me. They said they're not gonna play with Nazis." What is a Nazi? That hurt us the most. And from then on, we decided not to talk German anymore to the children, so there wouldn't be, anyhow. As time went on, it got better, but, and we moved away from there too. And then we moved in a house, in a two-story house in the first floor. And we lived there. It was nice, but somehow, I don't know what it was. We thought, wouldn't it be better we have our own home and wouldn't have to move around? And we began to look around. Well, I couldn't go with the two children, but Henry went with some friends and they looked at houses, and which we could afford. And so we finally settled on our first home, which was on Mead Avenue in the same street where your grandpa and your grandma lived. And after we were settled there, I took Rudy over to Trinity Sunday School, where he was enrolled and he really liked Sunday school, and he had gone to a little mission church, to a vacation Bible school, and got introduced to the Bible with such an interest that is hard to understand today. In that 2 weeks of vacation Bible school, he could say all the books of the Bible by heart,
Wow.
from Genesis to Revelation.
Wow.
Well,
Grandma, can I ask, you mentioned about what it was like for you during the war time. What, like later, I know you weren't able to find out right away, but your family and Grandpa Blank's family in Germany, could you tell kind of what you found out about how things were over there in Germany?
we never heard.
Never heard?
Never heard.
Not even after?
Well,
And you
yeah.
also mentioned to me, kind of at a different time, about like when you were visiting with Uncle Rudy in Germany, that you had talked with
Friedrich,
Friedrich,
yeah.
Like, could you just say what he said was to you? Because he was in the German army, right?
Yeah.
At that time.
He was an officer, and he. Well, I told you that.
Well, I don't think I had it on tape though.
He was training troops in northern Germany, in the state of Pommern, and of course he could not say what he was training them for, but the way I know now, they were trained for warfare. And he said, I'm so glad that you're going back to America, because bad times are coming. There's a war coming, and we don't know how it will turn out to be. But I'm glad you will be on the safe side. And once Heinrich wrote a newspaper home during the war, and that is before America was involved.
Right.
They were not involved right away.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And a reporter had gone over there and had visited near the border. Our part along Baden, there was the Siegfried line, which was entrenchment. Opposite the line was the Maginot line, the French line, and across the Rhine, the Siegfried line. And there were deep entrenchments, and I mean, it was close. And this reporter had come, and it was in the Chicago Tribune. And I don't know, I guess Henry always read the reports. And this reporter said, I walked into a little sleepy town by the name of Emmendingen. I walked into the city square where I saw children playing, and it seemed as if there was no war. I didn't see any destruction. And it reminded me of the book I read, All Quiet on the Western Front. That is what that little sleepy town reminded me of. And Henry put it home, and we said, here we read Emmendingen in a war report, you know. But otherwise we didn't know. And then when America got into the war, and then the heavy bombing started. And first, I know that then what they told me later. They couldn't, first they were in their own cells and had to go down when the alarm was given. And then when the heavy bombing started, then the cellars weren't safe enough anymore. In our school, which was across the street, there were deep basements, and they were made ready for shelter. It's freaking. And so they always had to go in those shelters and spend hours and hours of time till the all clear was given. A few houses were bombed and burned down. And one time, an American bomber must have gotten into trouble and threw out some stuff what made it heavier or so, and that landed in our backyard. And the neighbors all said, your sister sent you greetings from America. She had to report that, and it was some flight equipment, nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then we didn't hear anything except when Friedrich died in Russia, that the Red Cross sent us the message.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, and then we didn't know, are they still alive? And that was heavy on our hearts, not to know, you know. And so when the war finally ended, then the real misery started. Then the Allies wanted to starve out the German people. Their occupation came in. Our part was occupied by France, and they lived in luxury, and the German people were starving. There was just nothing in the stores, and everything was by ration cards. And then started the food sending from our side.
From the United States? Right, from where?
From where I sent hundreds of packages. We did.
Mm-hmm.
First it was restricted.
That was allowed?
Yeah, that
This was
allowed.
after, is this
That
after?
was after the war.
After the war.
First we could send 11 pounds, which was not much, and then it was raised to 22 pounds. And we sent every week 1 or 2 packages, every week. First they had to be put in cloth, in you know, that cheap
Burlap.
burlap, yeah. And then later on, well, we had a regular warehouse in our basement where we bought powdered milk, powdered eggs, dehydrated potatoes. I mean, everything in quantities, coffee, sugar, tea, everything, and it always had to make the standard, 22 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 week, 1 package to the Bronx, and then to the Herbalist, and then to Hildeblanc, which was bombed out in Mannheim and had nothing anymore except Friedrich's army coat and her little girl, and Brigitte, and they gave her the fare to Emmendingen, and here she stood at the Bronx door. That's all I have, the army coat from your son and my little girl.
Mm.
And all her furnishing, everything had burned up and was bombed out. And then a package for Hildegard, we called her Hilde. And she finally found work in the City Hall in Emmendingen, office work, and then they looked for a little apartment, which they found, and lived until Brigitte was 18 years old or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent some packages to neighbors and friends. I think I kept a record of that. When it had reached 360, I stopped registering. Then it tapered off. Then it got a little better. But they were poor, food as far as what you can eat,
Yeah.
what you can get. And that's when I see here the picky children picking on their food, and I don't like that, and I don't like that. And I think back how hungry they were. And how those letters what came, they say, how did you know I needed soap? Or how did you know I needed shoelaces? I had strings in my shoes. We couldn't buy nothing like that. How did you know that? But when you have nothing, everything is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy that we could have done that. Today, it would not be possible with the prices. That time, food was cheap here,
Mm-hmm.
very cheap, you know.
And probably postage too, it's mailing stuff.
Yeah, well, that too, yeah. With the postage, we couldn't do that anymore. Not in that quantum, what we did. But
Grandma, how, you kind of told about what it was like to be here and what it was like there. Kind of during the war, you were kind of in a funny or different situation between this growing up and having ties in Germany and being in the United States when the United States, along with many other countries, were at war with Germany. And how did you feel about that, or like the loyalties and
well,
ties and all that?
I thought the people what despised me just because I have German religion, I didn't take that. I thought I can afford to lose those people. If they don't want to be my friends, they're really not. The people the tenants in our home on Mead Avenue, they were of Swedish descent, and the lady said, why don't you tell people you're Swedish when they say you have an accent? I said, no. If I lose friends because of that, I don't lose too much. I know that would pass away again, and it wouldn't always stay that way. And I felt loyalty to this country. I thought it's the home of my sons, and where I had met many wonderful people, but were good and kind and helpful and outgoing, and those the one thing, I never gave up my camera. I thought, they can do what they want. I'm not gonna. I hid it. I couldn't use it through the war years, but I hid it in the linen closet and all the way back. And I thought, well, okay, nobody sees me use a camera, so let them come after me. And we even had to call a mechanic in on our radio that we couldn't hear shortwave, which was so, we really couldn't hear it clearly, it was only blurs. But we had to call a mechanic in that he destroyed it or whatever. And
well, how did you feel about, with what you were reading in the newspapers about, because I mean, being that Germany was the aggressor, and some of the things that, and reading about things with Adolf Hitler.
We were not really Hitler supporters, but we loved our country dearly, and we knew that the American sentiment long before the war started was against Germany. It was, I would go to a movie with your dad and with Heinrich, and something came against Germany, really ridiculous stuff, and people laughed and cheered or hissed, and I would say, not quietly but loud, "Oh, that's all lies," or so. Shh, be quiet. They had an elderly German soldier in combat pick up a child, what was a baby, what was lost, and take it in his arm and say, "Oh," and then the baby was crying, and he started to unbutton the buttons on his uniform like a mother would nurse a child. And then he reached in and pulled out a watch on a chain and held it. And the people laughed and clapped and hissed, because it was to me like, "I'm going to nurse you now," but it was a man, and here he takes out that watch. One time I was with the boys on the beach, and we made sand castles, and there was a Jewish woman sitting next to us, and they watched us, and she smiled, and then the boys went in the water, and I was ready to get up, go with them, and then she said, "Honey, you have an accent. I won't tell anybody, but tell me where you're from. I won't tell anybody." And that made me angry, and I said, "You can tell or not tell. I am from Germany, and I'm darn proud of it." She went, and I walked away. I just couldn't stand it. I won't tell anybody. And once I was in the streetcar and had a book under my arm with a German title. I didn't read it, and I had it under the arm, but if somebody wanted to see, could read it. And a man gave me a nudge, and he said, "Why don't you read American books?" I just looked at him, I didn't say anything. I looked at him, shook my head. But otherwise, that all passed, and I became a citizen when the hatred all started going down. Yeah. So. What can I tell you yet?
Well, Dad, I mean, you told me a lot. That's, you tell a lot about, you can tell me about my dad, anything.
Your dad, well, he was...
Just growing up and...
Yeah, he was a very serious child. He was not hard to raise. He I don't know. He just I think Hedy got twice or three times as many spankings than your dad did. Because if I said you're a bad boy, he was so unhappy, he followed me around and kept on saying, I'm not a bad boy. I'm and the most touching thing when my mother in Germany got sick and my sister wrote me that I should be prepared for anything, that a doctor has not much hope for her. And she said, one of these days I have to send you a very sad letter. And when that letter came, I was so heartbroken. I couldn't stop crying. And the boys came home from school and Rudy said, I'm so sorry for you, Mommy, but I cannot help you. And then he went his way. And I didn't want to keep on crying in front of them. And I went down in the basement and I did my ironing in the basement. And your dad took his schoolwork, his homework, came down in the basement, and he said, I want to be with you. I make my homework here. And he just touched me and smiled a little bit at me, and then did his homework. And you know, that was such a comfort that he had not go away from me, but wanted to be close to me. And he didn't say many endearing words or anything, but he wanted to be there. And that was very dear to me. So he was when he became a teenager, maybe but not like usually that. He didn't become rebellious. He had sometimes, he would lecture me, you know, when his dad and I disagreed with things, you know, and he said, why don't you just let him have his ways? And I said, but if his ways are stupid, can I not tell him so? Oh, he said, and then afterwards he said, yeah, you're right, but why do you have to argue about it or so, you know? But he had psychology in high school, and then he wanted to analyze me, you know, but he said, you are a obsessive neurotic, all these terms, you know. And I said, and I'm not, and you are. But this is about all, you know. So, and well, I don't know, when when Rudy graduated from Lane High School, he had all the honors what you could get. It was an outdoor celebration, graduation, and I said, I will watch when you march in. He said, I won't march in. I said, why not? He said, I'm on the podium with the faculty. Why? Well, you read the program. And then behind his name were all the things where he excelled in. And he did everything. And he was offered an $8,000 scholarship from the Navy. And his dad was so proud. But when Rudy said he wouldn't accept it, he said, Dad, I cannot understand. Boy, another kid would lick the ground to get it, but you see, he would have had to join the Navy and go in the Navy Academy and become, after college, become enter the Navy, as he said, I'm not heading that way. I want to be a pastor.
Grandma, could you tell me about Grandpa Blank? Just, and you told me the stories, but just tell me about him.
Well,
what kind of person he was.
He was a very kind, caring person. But he also had his weak sides. He sometimes drank too much, which caused me many tears and some disappointments. And then he was a workaholic. He didn't know when to stop. And as far as he was not an unbeliever, but with his work, he usually worked late in the night, and he came to church once in a while, but not regularly. And he didn't put any obstacles in Rudy's way. He was with him and he was proud of him. And when he preached or when whatever, he went and attended. But you couldn't make him. You had to. But I remember when I had the mastectomy, when your dad and mom got married, it was just 6 weeks before I had a radical mastectomy. And he was devastated at that time. He said, "You wouldn't believe it, but I pray all the time." And well, these are But we had many good years together, which I'm thankful for. And the good memories outweigh the disappointments. And he was happy when your mom and dad got married. And how happy he was about you. And checking when you came visiting that first Christmas, if you were cold, if you were warm enough,
You still have the doggy bank that he gave.
Yeah.
He got.
And that was, I didn't even know. He saw it on TV, and he said, "Oh, Johnny has to have that." And he went and got it, and then it was something not functioning right, and he pulled it back and got it. So he liked his garden, and he had looked forward to retiring and working in his garden all the time. And he never made it. He always said, "It's my garden." So but I always said, "It's your garden, but you need me to mow the lawn," because he couldn't with his weak heart. That was
So okay, go.
After he had a heart attack. And then it got him out of breath moving it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always said, "Yeah, it's your garden, but you need me to cut the lawn."
When did he have his first heart attack?
In the year before Moody graduated from the seminary.
Okay. And then Grandpa died of a...
Well, then he recovered.
Oh yeah.
And he lived, I think, 9 years yet. And then he had a second heart attack. And the doctor said, he will make it. If nothing else happens, he said, he will make it. Well, I only heard that he said he will make it. But he had a stroke. And then the doctor said, first we had one problem, now we have two. And he died the next day.
How old was Grandpa?
Huh?
How old was Grandpa?
63 or 64. I was 63, he was 64. Yeah. So ended an area. And then I lived 9 years alone in that house. And then I got a cancer of the throat, and I actually thought I wouldn't live to see Christmas that year, and that made me then decide to sell the house and move to California. And the house, as nice as it was, and as much as we loved to live in it, it became a burden. When 9 years go by, there need to be a man that looks after the little things, which I couldn't do, many things. I was strong those days yet. I could wash walls and ceilings and hang storm windows and do all kinds of things, which now seems to me, how was I able to do that? So, should I tell you now yet that
Sure.
that
Sure. Grandma wants to go back and tell about.
This is now the when we were married and in Chicago, I was there something over a week, and Henry was there for 2 years, and in a way we were still immigrants and didn't know our way and the way of the land, how to act. And his friends at work and the people from Emmendingen, what were in the Chicago area, they all said, you have to have a party and we want to come. And so we agreed we would have this party. And a German elderly couple from what worked, the man worked with Henry at the Bismarck Hotel. They said we have to arrange it, and I know they said, you're the bride, you don't have to worry anything, we arrange it. They bought a great big ham with a bone in it, and I know we cooked that ham for, they told us how many hours and what all to do. And then each one said they would bring something, and it was arranged for a Saturday evening. And on that, the week before, Henry and I had gone and bought a bedroom set because the other beds were used by Otto and by the other two fellows what lived with us. And so we wanted to have our own, and we had bought a bedroom set with twin beds and 2 dressers. And that morning of the party, the furniture were delivered, and I was busy putting my nicest linen on it, my nicest cover, the new blankets I had bought from Germany, all the nicest thing I put on there. And then that, you must remember, it was still prohibition, and the fellows decorated the table. Everything was set up very nice. And a few fellows from where he worked, they said they would come. And that was okay with us. But there was a Mexican fellow in the hotel. I don't know what job he had. And he owned a small airplane. And was a little bit of a bragger. He also bought himself an airplane uniform, kind of official looking. And he said, Blank, you didn't invite me, but I invite myself. I come with my wife, and she's gonna dance for you. So if you like it or not, I will come with my wife. He said, I don't know, I don't think he quite will fit in the party, but I don't think it would have been right for me to tell Diaz not to come. So the evening came, and our German friends came, and they all brought, some of them brought some homemade wine and a few bottles of whiskey and in the hip pockets and well, the party started out nice and we were happy and I could talk German to the ones from Emmendingen and the others, and someone said, now you sit down and when they speak English you listen closely, that's how you learn English. And I was determined to listen. And then when Diaz came, he brought his wife, real Spanish type looking, in a black lace dress with her hair all back combed and heavy makeup on and high-heeled shoes. And I'm gonna dance for you. And she looked around at the man. I thought, oh, you're not gonna dance for me. You look for admirers. And they brought a piano player along, so he could then play for her dancing. And she said, and I want the carpet rolled up. I want to dance on a bare floor. So they rolled up the carpet in the living room with all those people there. And then the piano player started to play and she did all those and glancing at all the men and smiling at them and I thought, no, that doesn't fit in too good here, but anyhow, she had the center of attention for that time. And then they started drinking, Diaz, and he came in his uniform, his pilot uniform. Mm. And then she kind of was flirting with the piano player. And then Diaz got angry at this guy. And Henry didn't want no fight or anything, and he moved him in the bathroom and said, be quiet and don't fight. And then the people wanted to use the bathroom, so they pushed him in our bedroom with my new furniture, my new everything. And they shoved each other around and yelled at each other. And I listened good what they said to each other. And he was smoking and going around and I don't know what took place in the bedroom. Now we lived on the second floor. And she wanted to go out and he wouldn't let her. You stay here. She said, then I jump out the window. And no, you're not. And they got into a shoving and fighting again with the piano player and pushing him around and telling him some nice words. And then she opened the window, threw out her fur coat and jumped after him. And then Diaz, oh my God, he ran in the living room and all the crowd of people. My wife, she jumped out the window, oh my. And so the men ran down and brought her up again. She was bleeding. And later on my new bed, with her black net dress and the blood running down, and they shoved me out at the door. They opened up drawers and took out towels and dipped them in water and washed the blood off, and that black net dress, the color came out, and Diaz stood there with his cigarette. Oh, what I'm doing, my wife. And and he's burning cigarette on my new blanket. And that bedroom looked a mess. And then somebody called the doctor. And they said later on, they called the doctor on the south side. And that was in the middle of the night. And then they said, oh, I bet the police will come. We all ending up in the paddy wagon. And our German friends left and said, we're going into a drugstore. We call you later. We're not going to go home, but we call you later to see what's going on. And when the doctor didn't come, and they were all kind of gone, then they took that Mrs. Diaz out, and she could walk. She wasn't not anything broken or anything, but she was bleeding on the head. And she went past me and she said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I had no feeling. I just thought, that should be a wedding party. I would rather, I wish I could walk home. And well, and then when they were gone, the others, the German friends called, and we said, no, nobody came, we're here. So they came back. And then the celebrating continued till it was early morning. And it's hard to describe. The kitchen table was a large kitchen we had there. Was a round open table. And it had a tablecloth on it when it all started. And when they left, everybody wanted to help. Between broken dishes and broken glasses. And that kitchen table was like a pyramid with dirty dishes and leftover food. You name it, it was there. And the worst thing for me was my ruined linen, my burned blanket, and the mess. And then the next day, well, we had a few hours of sleep. And Henry was very sweet. He said, don't think it's going to be like that. I said, if that is America, I don't want no part of it. He said, it won't be like that. We will have our good times. And we will work together today if it takes us all day. And we did. It took us a whole day and more to clean up the mess. Some of them, but people bought presents were already in pieces, and I didn't care either. And we cleaned it up, and I mended the burned blanket and took care of what I could do again. But I tell you, yeah, now comes the dirty part. I had listened so good and so close what they all said, but they said, watch out what people said. I think about 3 days later, I remembered something again. When Heinrich came home, I said to him, now, "Hello, you son of a bitch." He said, "What? What? Who told you that?" I said, "Well, that's what Dio said to the piano player. Don't you ever say that again." Then he explained it to me what it means.
It's not the best greeting to give to someone.
Yeah. Who said that to you?
Huh. Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how greenhorns begin their life in the United States. Want to Mary Poppins? Stephen, get away! Get away!
That's what everyone tells me, Grandma. I can't figure it out.
What?
Get away.
Scram! love you too very much.